Good morning, everyone. So today we'll be starting with the new chapter, a new note. The note is for the gas in place analysis. As you can see, I have already uploaded the note for you. And this gas in place analysis will be having some of the items common of whatever we have seen in the earlier background note of the coal bed methane storage and the reservoir properties and some of the background analysis. But I'll be skipping all those common things, and then I'll be discussing more about the things what we have not discussed. Okay. And although I have given you the 3 chapters, but I'll be excluding most of the items which are similar to you. Okay, and which are similar and which are already identified and which have already been discussed in the classes. Okay, so to start with our gas in place analysis overview, let me tell you that so far you have identified with different terms, that gas content, then the gas adsorption capacity or the gas storage capacity, and that inch to gas in place. Okay. Now you have to understand that the different terminology are not same always. Okay. Suppose the gas storage capacity is the term which we are going to use for the coal which have been prepared and treated in the laboratory, and then we are going to estimate the storage capacity by the isotherm test in the laboratory. Okay. Whereas gas content is being measured by the resorption canister testing. Okay. By using a core sample, and this gas content is related to a coal sample, and then it is estimated with the reservoir basin or the reservoir seam. Okay. Whereas the gas in place, as from the name you can very well understand that the gas in place means it is generally for the in situ concept. Gas in place means if the coal seam or the coal basin is lying in the in situ or in the field case, so whatever amount of the gases that are stored into that seam or into that place, that is we are going to measure and termed as the gas in place analysis. Okay. So whatever we have discussed so far, most of them was having the gas storage capacity or the gas content by the laboratory or the field measurement. But here we are going to do the gas in place analysis or the estimation of the gas in place. That means if there is a coal seam or the coal basin, then without taking any coal sample, how we can estimate the gas in place gas, that means the gases which are being stored into the seam or the coal reservoir. So that thing we need to understand now. Okay. But believe me, some of the things are very much common, and so I'll be skipping those things. Okay. So so don't mix up or don't get confused with these terminologies: gas storage capacity, gas adsorption capacity, and the gas in place or the gas content. These are having some fine line differences among them. Okay. Now you have already have some idea that the gas in place analysis, you have to have some of the component, and as this gas in place analysis is totally in the field system. Okay. That means whenever we are going to do the gas in place analysis, we have to we can take only the borehole logs. Okay. And from then we can collect the core, and then only we can estimate the properties we can estimate by the laboratory measurement, and then we are going to estimate the other parameters taking from the laboratory results, and we are going to estimate the total reserve. Okay, how much gas is available in the total reserve. But as you know that the qualification process is there, so it is not a man-made process, it is totally a natural process. And this qualification process, the coal is being formed depending on the in situ or the drift theory. So again, you cannot restrict some part of the coal to situate only one place or to transfer from one place to another place. Again, you are not having any control. The migration of the rock elements or the fluid, okay, the fluid flow or the moisture evaporation during the different process of different stages of the qualification, that is also beyond our control. Okay, so whenever we are going to do this gas in place analysis, you have seen also earlier that we have to measure certain parameter. Okay, the most important parameter of this gas in place analysis are varying from place to place, but then also there are some 3-4 parameters which we need to understand first. Okay, so the some of the important parameters are the drainage area. Okay, if you are driving a borehole, the total drainage area or the how much the network has been spread to the surrounding seams of that boreholes. Okay, from that boreholes, the reservoir thickness, the coal reserve thickness, the reservoir rock porosity. The porosity means the void space of this reservoir rocks, because that void space, whether it is a matrix porosity or whether it is a fracture porosity, this porosity will be giving you the concept of the void spaces within that. And this void space may also include the pore spaces and the cleat apertures or the discontinuities, okay, or the cleats fracture spaces of the network. And then the saturation of the vapor phase within this porosity. That means how much the water or the gas, okay, whether it is saturated, what is the condition of the different phases. So based on that, we are going to analyze we are going to estimate the gas in place analysis. Okay. Now this gas in place analysis is for the seam conventional gas reservoirs also, and again for the coal bed reservoirs also. You need to have these 4 important parameter: the area, the thickness, the reservoir rock density, and the in situ gas content. So again, if you are going to have this coal bed seam, so obviously you have to have some idea about the in situ content of the gas. Okay, so in case of mining, you know that the gas content may be varying from place to place, and that's why it is nominated as the degree 1, degree 2, and the degree 3 of the gasiness. Okay, and similarly like that. So in case of the CBM reservoirs also, you have to have some idea about this gas in place analysis. Okay, so the gas content, whatever the gas content is being measured, the gas content is generally being measured by the desorption condenser testing. And if you are going to take the representative sample from the core and do the study in the laboratory, then you have to have some 10 or 20 number of the samples measured into the laboratory, provided that 10 or 20 number of the samples are representative of that, totally representing your coal seam or the coal basin. If not, then again there will be some amount of the error. Okay, but it is observed that even if you have identified some 3 or 4 parameters, just like here, okay, there are some of the parameter which is very important, but the problem for this accurate measurement is that this data, this 4 parameter or some corresponding parameter, it is very difficult to directly measure this. Okay, in the in situ, it is very difficult to directly measure this data or directly measure these parameters. So most of the cases, because you cannot have any approach, you cannot access that, you are having only approach for the boreholes. Okay, and you can take the borehole logs, and from there you can collect the samples. Okay, you can collect the samples and you can have the results for that. So the problem is that whatever the reservoir drainage area and the reservoir thickness, that is usually determined by the geophysical well logs or the seismic data. Okay, that can be measured by the geophysical well logs or the geophysical data. But the reservoir, the rock property or the rock porosity, okay, and the other vapor phase saturation or the density and the gas content, these are going to vary from place to place, and you can only have some estimation of this. You cannot actually determine all of this. Okay, so there lies the problem of accurate measurements of the gas in place. Okay, and again it is observed, if you see the text, they have discussed why it is very much difficult. Depending on the analysis type, depending on the purpose for which you are going to analyze, or depending on the composition or the reservoir type, what type of reservoir it is. Okay, there are different type of reservoir. I have not told you discussed you the different type of the reservoirs. Okay, I have only in the last time only I have discussed about the conventional reservoirs and the coal-bed reservoirs. And based on the analysis type, just like the case of the isotherm testing, you know that the isotherm testing can be done by the volumetric method, by manometric method, or by gravimetric method. Okay, so like that, depending on the type of your measurement, okay, depending on type of your analysis, and obviously depending on the various uncertainty associated with the other parameters, okay, and the purpose for which you are going to do this measurement, whether you are going to do for some hazard analysis from a safety point of view, just like in case for the mining, or you are going to collect the production from for the gas and the oil, or you are just going to assess this area about the resource consideration for the from the resource estimation. Okay, so these are the different conditions which are going to change, which are going to deviate your results from one another. Okay, there are four different mechanisms of this storage mechanism into the reservoir rocks. You can see the first one is the compression. The compression is the normal compression of the gas molecules within due to pressure within the rock pores. Then is the absorption. Absorption you have already seen, that is the absorption of the gas molecules, okay, by the solid phases and the surface, okay, into the oil and the brine solution. Inclusion of the gas molecules within the solids and the crystalline structure, okay, and finally it is the adsorption of the gas molecules within the micropores. Okay, so depending on this variation and the fraction of this storage mechanism, your process for analyzing the gas content or the original in situ gas in place analysis will again vary. And again, you have already have some idea about the coal-bed methane reservoir, the matrix and the matrix and the fracture network. So you know that depending on the properties of the coal matrix and the coal fracture network, it is obviously dual porosity single permeability model with having face clits, butt clits, bedding plane, and the tertiary clits are serving as the fracture network comprising the fracture network. And this fracture network or the coal matrix is very much anisotropic in nature as well as heterogenic. Okay, both the words are very important. They are coal-bed methane reservoirs are the anisotropic and heterogenic. It is not only for the coal-bed methane reservoir, any reservoir in the underground. Okay, because it is naturally formed, so there exists the heterogeneity. You cannot consider that okay, it is homogeneous and it is isotropic, so every property will be same at different direction. No, this inherent anisotropy and heterogenic condition again create the problem for accurate estimation of this original gas in place. Okay, because this is you don't you cannot ensure that okay, that after 5 meter this will be the value, this value will be reduced for the thickness, or the values will be reduced for the saturation, or it is going to increase. You can only have some of the access point from the borehole, from the surface boreholes. Okay, and then everything is based on the close estimation or from the scientific judgment point of view. Okay, scientific justifications. Okay, so if you are going to place your borehole point, okay, suppose 100 meter apart or 200 meter apart, you may find that this deviation, this separation of these two borehole is not giving you the actual data. Why? Because within this 100-meter or 150-meter zone from this two borehole, the coal seam may vary a lot. Okay, and there may be chances of the faulting and the folding depending on the reserves. And then again there will be inclusion of the other fluid seepage, or there will be high amount of the water seepage. There will be changes in the porosity and the permeability condition. So obviously there may be other rock intrusion, the unconformities, or the other discontinuities. And so this concept of this heterogeneous and the anisotropic has to be taken care of very carefully. Okay, otherwise the total calculation will be wrong. Okay, so to start our discussion, this was just the introduction part. Now to start our discussion, we have to learn about what are the different types of the reservoir that are available. Okay, now you can see that based on the reservoir availability, you have seen that there are different types of the reservoir which is studied into this unconventional reservoir. Okay, conventional and the unconventional reservoir type, and all of them can give you some amount of the gases storage for the gas. Okay, so let us see what are the different gas reservoirs. There are conventional gas reservoirs, there are gas condensate reservoirs, unconventional gas reservoirs, coal bed gas reservoirs, and gas bearing shale reservoirs. Okay, so let us start one by one. What are the different concept of these gas reservoirs? The conventional gas reservoirs are the place where the gas molecules are stored by compression, by pressure compression, okay, within the rock pores. Okay, so obviously as it is going to be stored into the rock pores by means of compression and not by the adsorption, the gases here are in the free space. And so if you can estimate the total pore space available within this rock type, so you'll be able to estimate the gas in place in the conventional gas reservoirs. Okay, and obviously as this is conventional gas reservoir, there is no such interaction of this gas and the solid much more. Okay, and the variation is also the variation of the rock properties are also very less. Okay, and with the function of the pressure change, the rock porosity that did not change very higher fashion. Okay, so it is only mildly, it will only change very little. And whatever the natural gases are stored into this conventional gas reservoir, that can be estimated by the or calculated by the temperature, pressure, and the volume, including these three parameters and some governing gas law. Okay, and you will be able to calculate what is the total amount of the gases stored into these reservoirs. Okay, and this in situ gas content is a direct function of the effective rock porosity and the reservoir temperature and the pressure and the gas composition. So based on this property, you will be able to calculate the conventional gas reservoirs. Now comes the gas condensate reservoirs. Okay, now as from the name you can see that the gas condensate reservoir, that means gases are already not in a free like the conventional gas reservoir, but they are already condensed. Okay, now depending on the gas condensation method, the certain condition of the temperature and pressure have to be certain conditions of temperature and pressure have to be present, otherwise gases will not become condensed. Okay, so you can see that there is a particular pressure and the temperature. In the imperial units it is given as 200 degree Fahrenheit and 2000 psi absolute. Okay, so with this temperature and the pressure combination, it will be assumed that the gases are condensed, and then you are going to, these gases will be condensed into the natural, the normal natural gases. They are dissolved in the significant amount of the non-volatile hydrocarbons. Okay, the non-volatile hydrocarbons are dissolved into the rock, into the other rock type, and this, when this dissolution, okay, is more than 0.7 mole percent, okay, which is greater than the 0.7 mole percent, this dissolution, then the reservoir is referred as a gas condensate reservoir. So obviously, with a particular temperature and pressure, when the gases are dissolved their non-volatile components and into the rock, and if that dissolution is more than the 0.7 mole percent, then this reservoir is called or termed as a gas condensate reservoir. Okay. Now the gas in place analysis is not very easy for this gas condensate reservoir. Why? Because you have to know about the saturation, you have to know about the temperature and the pressure, okay, and you have to know about the area. But you need to have the special technique, because gases are not in a free state or adsorbed state, but they are in the condensed stage. Okay, so whatever method that is applicable for the conventional gas reservoirs to estimate the gas in place analysis, you will not be able to use that similar method for the gas condensate reservoir. Okay, and so it is very difficult, a little bit difficult for this type of reservoir. And moreover, you need to have the fraction of the vapor phase and the gas phase. Okay, there are two different phases, because when it is condensed, okay, there is obviously some water or the liquids are present. So the vapor and the liquid, the two different phases are present, and then you have to have the fraction, okay, about this. And this fraction, again, it can vary from place to place, reservoir to reservoir. Third one is the unconventional gas reservoirs. What is the unconventional gas reservoir? When the rock pores contain the liquid phase fluids such as brine and the crude oil, and some natural gases can be stored in the adsorbed phase into that crude oil or the brine or the reservoirs. Okay, and the solubility of these reservoirs of the gas, okay, it will depend on the reservoir temperature and the reservoir pressure, the molecular properties of the fluid phase, okay, and the liquid phase fluid, and the molecular properties of the gas constituent. Okay, so you can see here that whenever there is an unconventional reservoir, the fluids, whatever the fluids are present, the gases can be stored into the fluids also. Okay, so obviously, as this adsorption is taking place, so again the temperature and the pressure concepts will be coming, and again, depending on the composition and the properties of the fluid, the gases will be stored. So obviously the properties of the fluid is also need to be understood, and obviously the type of the gases that are going to be adsorbed. So these are some of the properties you need to understand when you are going to consider the gas in place of the unconventional reservoirs. Okay, now for these cases, for these unconventional gas reservoirs, whenever the natural gas and the water occur together within a pore of the rocks, suppose the gases are stored into the water with the water, and they are going to be stored into the rock type, and then with temperature and the pressure variation, it can form a crystalline, and the gases can be stored within that crystal. Okay, so in that case, it will be called as a gas hydrate reservoir. It will be called as a gas hydrate reservoir, or simply the gas hydrates, because the gases are coexisting with the water particles, okay, or the liquid particles, and they are forming forming the pores, they are forming the molecules, and they are together, they are stored into the crystalline form. So that is called the gas hydrates. Okay, and again, the gas content, to measure the gas content of this gas hydrate, again you have to have the crystal structure, their temperature and the pressure, and the molecular properties of this gas constituent is very important. Okay, because it is very sensitive. A single cubic feet of the methane hydrate can store as much as 164 standard cubic feet of the methane gas. Okay, so you can understand that a cubic feet of the a single cubic foot of the methane hydrate can store as much as 164 cubic feet of the methane gas. So you can see how much powerful it is. Okay, and that the gas hydrate again it is going to absorb the methane gas. So obviously it and when you are going to analyze the gas in place, this temperature, pressure, and the hydrate properties, the gas concentrate on the gas crystalline properties will be very much important. Okay, and surrounding rock structure. Now it is observed that in the worldwide situation, in the worldwide scenario, there are different type of this gas hydrates and the gas natural gas reservoirs are present. Okay, first of all is the crude oil reservoirs, okay, where the gases are stored in the by dissolution of the solution gas. It is stored by the absorption. Okay. Next, there is the aquifer reservoirs, which is called the brine solution. Brine solution is the carbon dioxide and the sodium hydroxide or the sodium carbonate solution is present. This is the brine water. And then the geopressured reservoirs, which is called the geopressured gas. The gases can be stored or located there by means of the variation of the pressure. Okay, so now you can understand there are different types of the reservoirs which you need to know, and each of the reservoirs have some different concept for the calculation of the gas in place, and they are also having some different property and the structure and the technique for taking out the gases. Okay, next is the coal bed gas reservoirs. Okay, coal bed gas reservoirs is similarly as the coal bed methane reservoirs. You have already learned in detail about this, so will be just skipping this. They are the dual porosity single permeability concept. Okay, next come the gas bearing shale reservoirs. Shale reservoirs, it is also a different type of the rock. Okay, just like the coal reserve, it is now the shale. The rock type is the shale. Okay, it is also observed globally that the shale being very fine-grained or whether it is being coarse-grained, it is definitely having very high amount of the gas storage capacity, but with respect to the coal bed methane storage capacity, it is having less capacity. So if you are going to compare the coal bed methane reservoir and the shale gas reserves, the shale gas reserve will be having some less capacity. Why? Because if you compare the rock type of the coal and shale, you know that the coal is having very much visible fracture plane or the cleavage planes, and it is very much fragile, whereas shale is only weak along the bedding planes. Okay, but across the bedding planes it is very strong. You cannot break it easily. Whereas along the bedding plane, along the discontinuity, if you just put a tap with the hammer, it will be broken into the pieces. Okay, so this again obviously this is anisotropy of the shale reserves. Okay, because the properties will be different for different directions. Okay, and so this anisotropy also is coming to the picture for the shale gas, and the shale gas reserves are also important for the storage of the gases, because whenever the coal has a tendency to escape the gas into the atmosphere, because depending on the compression or the breakage or the shrinkage, swelling effect, or maybe depending on the drilling or the other opening of the aperture of the discontinuities or the clades. Shale is comparatively stronger rock, not that much soft type of rock as the coal. Okay, its strength is a little bit higher, so it can withstand some of the loads, and it is not easily broken. Shale may not be having that much of the discontinuity, which is easily visible for the coal, and the clits are also very much limited into the shale. Okay, but then What are the things you need to know if you are going to estimate the gas in place in the shale gas reserves? If you are going to estimate the shale gas reserves, you have to see that there are different constituents of the shale gas. Okay, the temperature pressure will be coming an obvious parameter, but then the total organic content in the shale also, there are organic contents, there are some bitumen type. Okay, there are some clay content and there are some molecular properties of the other gas constituents which will give you the idea about the total gas in place into the shell. Okay. The coal properties, as you know that the coal, if you do the approximate analysis, if you do the ultimate analysis, you will be able to know the coal constituents. Whereas for the shale, it is having the total organic content or the total organic component into which the maximum amount of the gases are stored. Okay. Whereas it is also observed that the clay particles, the particle diameter is very fine. It is very fine matrix. Okay. The clay particle are also sometimes having some amount of the gases stored. Okay. There are published literature that is going to tell us, those are going to tell us that, okay, even if some clay reservoirs are present, sometimes the clay, depending on the clay properties, the clay reservoirs are also going to absorb some amount of the gases. Okay. So the shale gas reserves, you can see if you read this text, they have discussed some of the important shale gas reserves globally. Okay, there are some Antietam shale in the Michigan basins of US state. There are Devonian shale in the Appalachian basins. There are Barnett shale in the Fort Worth basins. Okay, and so on. So it is not that the shale gas basin is also very much new to the concept, but it is also most of the work has been done. It is also in a common storage mechanism that is being used for the decades. Okay, and as a serving as an alternate resources to store the gases. Okay, the coal bed gas recovery. The coal bed gas recovery is related to the recovery of the gases from the coal bed reservoir. You have already studied this, so I'll be skipping this. Okay. The next is the method. The methods for gas in place or the gas content analysis. Okay. Now these methods are not discussed earlier, so I'll be discussing this method. The method for measuring the gas content at the field from the drill cuttings or from the conventional core samples can be divided into three different methods. Okay. The first one is the pressure coding methods. Then the direct methods, and then there are the indirect methods. The pressure coding method is the direct method, which involves trapping a cored rock sample down the hole within a sealed barrel. Suppose you are going to use a core barrel within the drill sting, and you are using the diamond cutter bit. Okay, the diamond bit, and as you are going to put it down, okay, you are going to collect a drill core and you are going to seal it. Your drill sting is having a mechanism within the core barrel. You are going to collect that core and you are going to seal it. Okay, the mechanism is that you are going to seal it, and then you are going to take out the core barrel part into the atmosphere, into the surface, and you are going to measure the dissolved gas content. Okay, because you are going to take out the core from the reservoir, so obviously its pressure is going to zero, and so as the pressure is going to be reduced, it is going to dissolve the gas. Okay. And so you are going to measure the in situ gas content by measuring the total volume that is going to be dissolved from the sample. This is called the direct method. This is called the pressure coding method. Direct method is somewhat different. This is called the pressure coding method. This is the simplest method available in the field to estimate the gas content. Okay, but then these methods require specialized equipment, because At the same time, you will be cutting a sample and you will be sealing it within this core barrel. Is not a very easy thing. Okay, the specially built mechanisms or the equipment which is required, it is very much costly, and again the cost of this technique is sometimes 5 times higher than the conventional coring method. So obviously you can understand that this is not very much common, and this is very much limited and only done for the specific purposes. Okay. Uh, then this second method, which is called the direct method analysis. Okay, this direct method analysis is actually framed for the mining engineers. Okay, for the mining engineers, and they have given the outlines of this method because they have used this direct method analysis to collect the gas content and the study for the any possible gas hazards. You know that depending on the methane content, you have understood about the methane layering, you have known about the methane formation, okay, or the hazards coming to the mine due to the methane gas explosion. Okay, so they in the mining environment, to know the methane gas is very important, and so this technique is directly coming from the mining method, where you will be taking the coal samples. It may be from the drill cuttings or it may be from the conventional cores, and you have to put the coal core in the airtight desorption canister. Okay, airtight component, which is called the desorption canister, airtight container, which is the desorption canister, and then you are going to measure the volume of the gas that is going to dissolve as a function of time with the temperature and the pressure conditions. Okay, so it is more or less the same principle as the pressure cooling technique, but somewhat modified to suit the different other limitations of the pressure cooling method. Okay, now as you know that whenever you are going to take out the core into the surface, already when you are going to transferring the core from the core barrel to the desorption canister, some amount of the gases will be lost. Okay, and as the pressure has been taken suddenly to zero to atmosphere, it is already started to dissolve. So if you are not going to consider that much of time, the starting time very accurately, you are going to lose some amount of the gas desorption or the gas content. Okay, so you have earlier seen that how the lost gas component can be calculated. So that is a part of the direct method. Here, when you are going to measure this desorption gas, the desorption before the desorption, you have to put the estimation of the starting time so that you can proceed backwards later with the graph of the dissolved gas content to get the actual or and accurate lost gas component. And then when the gas desorption is totally done, okay, you have to crush the sample. You have to crush the drill cuttings, all the core samples to the pieces to increase the surface area and to heat up the sample, and then finally you will be taking out the residual gas that are present into the coal particles. Okay, and the total gas content measured by this will be the sum of the lost gas component plus the dissolved gas component plus this residual gas component. Okay, this much analysis you have already learned. I have already discussed you the three different gas components. Okay, I have also shown you earlier how you are going to proceed backward to estimate the loss gas component, and the similar method is going to be used, and this is called the direct method. This is that was the part of the direct method of analysis. Okay, so obviously whenever you are going to do the sample analysis, you have to be very careful about the sample you are going to collect, because it is observed that in this direct method, whatever results you are getting, that is varied widely. Okay, that means if you are taking 10 samples from a reservoir, you may get 10 different values varying largely among them, but they are from the same coal reserves. Okay, so that is the problem of this direct method. Why? Because of this sample you are going to collect, there is a anisotropy, there is a heterogeneity, There are the different temperature, pressure condition. There is the analysis different. There are different analysis method. Okay, and there is sophisticated data manipulation. There is sophisticated calculation or the estimation is required. Okay, which affect the accuracy of this direct method. But let me tell you, this is the only method available, okay, other than the pressure coding method, which is very much costly method. The direct method is the only method which are available for get an estimation of this gas content. So although it is overestimated and the underestimated chances are present, we have to take with the zone of accuracy. That means we can take the data, but then we can tell that okay, the data is 20% or maybe 15% or maybe 10% overestimated or underestimated, and there is a plus minus range of this actual value from this actual value. Okay. Then the third method is obviously for the indirect method. Okay, if you take the direct method, you can get that okay, there's a graph also you can make, and you have also seen this type of graph where you will see the lost gas component. Okay, you have already seen earlier that the lost gas component is present, and you have to check that lost gas component. Okay, the figure is not given here, but I think in the earlier discussion you are already having that figure where you are going to extend the lost gas component from the starting time. Okay, so please refer to that figure also. In the indirect method, that is only possible. Indirect method we are going to apply when there is no coal sample available, when you cannot take any coal sample. But what you can do, you have the property, and you can take the other reservoir prediction or other data, and you can take those data, or you can take those results or the historical results, and you are going to match this with your coal seam rank or the composition, and then you are going to estimate the gas content. Suppose you cannot take any coal sample from underground, but you have the idea about the coal rank and the coal composition. So now you are going to take the historical data or the analyzed data of the similar coal type and see that how much the gas content it is observed earlier. So that gas content you are going to use it for your purpose. Why? Because you can see that depending on the sample you are going to collect, the data, you can see from the data that depending on the sample you are going to collect, if you are going to correlate the vitrinate fluctuance with the gas content, you can see that sometimes it is very much correlated. Okay, it is increasing with the rank, but sometimes it will see that even if the rank is going to increase, it is not always the case that you will be getting the higher reserve capacity. So sometimes this polynomial relation is also possible, and the deviation from the normal concept is also possible. So it is very difficult to utilize one prediction or one component or the data from the one particular reservoir and using the same concept to the other reservoirs, because depending on the reservoirs or the basin or the coal seams, the empirical relations, because these are all the field data, the field data are mostly correlated with the empirical relations in the field, and so that may vary, that have a tendency to vary from place to place, and they are very much site specific. So there lies the error of the indirect method, and you cannot use this indirect method for very reliable calculation. You have to go for the direct method, although with some of the 20% or the 15% of the overestimation chances are there, underestimation or the overestimation chances are there, but this indirect method you cannot go for the reliable estimation prediction. Okay, now you can also see in this figure you can see that if there is any chances of the estimation, overestimation and the underestimation on the saturated condition, you can see that depending on the gas saturation, how the gas saturation or the partial saturation or the total saturation can change the recovery of the gas reserves. Okay, so that's why the stage saturations, how they are going to vary for the undersaturated case and the saturated case, they can greatly enhance the production. So obviously your gas content will not be the same, and you can see that there may be 2 times to 3 times increase of this data. So it is very much difficult to estimate the properties, and from there to rely on this data. Okay. The next concept is that whenever you are going to do this resource assessment, whenever you are going to do the resource assessment, the resource for this resource assessment also, you have to have the nominal data input, just like the coal properties you have to give, and then the other thickness and the borehole log data you have to provide. But let me tell you that in this resource assessment also there is a chances of the variation. Why? Because of the inherent heterogeneity and the variation of the qualification process. Okay. Whenever you are going to do this gas in place analysis, you have to then see the density. Okay, the density and the thickness are the very crucial for the gas reservoir analysis or the gas in place analysis, because it is the density which will give you the idea that how much packed is your rock type, how much packed is your rock type, and the chances of the porosity or the pore volumes. Okay, and the thickness, depending on the whether it is the total thickness you are going to use or it is the net reservoir thickness you are going to use for the estimation of the resource. Okay, so depending on the net reservoir or the bulk thickness or the total thickness, your calculation will again going to difference. Okay, there will be difference in the calculation. So whenever you are going to use this gas in place analysis, and whatever method you are going to choose, you have to be very careful about the purpose, about the type of the estimation. If you are going to use the data for very accurate estimation, you have no other options, but you have to go for the direct method. Okay, if you are having very less number of investment, and then you have to perform this for a very cheap manner, then you have to go for the pressure coding method, but then your data may not be as good as the direct method. Okay, and then for this reserve assessment, you have to think about the weathering effect and the oxidation effect of the coal samples, because whenever you are going to measure this in situ gas in place analysis, you are going to take out the coal sample, and you know that in the underground of the reservoir there is a fluid are present, and the gases are also present. The gases may be migrated from place to place. Fluids may also migrate from place to place, and this may be acidic or the basic. And so, depending on the fluid flow or the gas flow mechanisms, there may be weathering effect of the rock, and there may be chemical effect on the rock constituents, because it may be some part of the rock may be oxidized, some part of it may be carbonated or decarbonated, like that. Okay, so these things are also inherent into your reservoir, and so the accuracy of this gas in place calculation is somewhat very difficult. We can only estimate the properties. Okay, the key requirement for obtaining the accurate values for average in situ gas content, gross reservoir thickness, and the average reservoir rock density is the use of proper sampling, testing, and the data analysis method. This is, in a nutshell, the main component of your agenda. Okay, so you have to have accurate information of the samples. You have to accurately fabricate your testing equipment, or you have to put the conditions, and then during the analysis you have to justify accordingly with the accuracy, with the type of the error. Okay, so like the way I have given you one error analysis, so then you can say that okay, this is my data is more or less valid, and the error percentage is only 10% or 8%, and how much it is going to vary with the pressure. Okay, so this was the general idea about the gas in place consideration for today. And in the next class, we'll be starting with this with the next chapter, which is for the gas in place methodology. Okay. Now in this methodology, again, I'm going to skip whatever I have already discussed in the storage in the third chapter or the fourth chapter of my earlier note. Okay. So this is for today. Any questions for you? Any questions? Okay. If you are having no